Esto es Entrevistas Pop. Hoy, Taco.
If you're blue and you don't know where to go to, why don't you go where fashion sits? Putting on the Ritz.
So, working from home, we've been for the past 2 years in COVID, lockdown, stress, and everything. So, I'd like to start this interview asking, how's it been for you? Tell us a little.
Boring. I'm not used to just hanging around at home, but I made the best of it, and I'm very happy that Facebook saved my life. I did a lot of work on Facebook, met a lot of new fans, and so that kept me busy. And in the meanwhile, I also found another partner. I'm a co-writer. We're writing music together. So when I had a free day, I would go over to his place, and we got a lot of music done.
So you were able to move around a little in these difficult times?
Well, not really. I was very careful. So I know all the supermarkets now in my little village. I know where every product is placed. And that's actually the only fun I've been having, going out to supermarkets or to the pharmacy. That's it.
Well, that was part of most of us during lockdown. The only times we could go out was for going shopping. So we would start going to different supermarkets a little further away from home. So you could just be outside for a while. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. This has to end, But okay. I'm getting my second booster now, and what more can we do? Wear masks, keep a distance.
Look after each other, basically. Yeah. Okay, so you survived the epidemic so far, which is good. Crossing our fingers here. Tell us a little about yourself, Taco. It's a really interesting story. So I'd like to go way back. How did you get started in the music business? I mean, what were your main influences? Tell us a little about that. Okay,
I come from a very musical family. My grandfather, my mother's father, was a band leader in Indonesia. We were all colony kids. Dutch moved to Indonesia around 1600 something with the Dutch East India Company. So growing up, there was always music in the house. My parents always listened to music. My other grandfather, he played the violin. And I was put on a little children's music school when I was about 6 or 7 around that time. And we would do little children operettas. So that's how I got started. And then when we moved to Singapore from the Netherlands, I went to the International Schools of America. And there, of course, you go into choir, you get to learn the American songbook. And I would do the very first musicals, like Your Good Man, Charlie Brown. And it would end when I graduated with the Fantastics, or even a show like Fiddler on the Roof. So that's kind of like the background. And when we finally came to Germany, it was my father's idea, because I didn't know what to study. He said, why don't you go to acting school? Because, you always like being on stage. And I did that, learned my German. I went to the theater. I played as an extra. And from 17 on, my whole world was just doing theater projects. At night, I would go to the rock clubs in Hamburg, where I live now, and jam with the guys, do my rock and roll days.
So how did this jamming and the theater, how did that put you into the music business? How did you get started?
Well, because in the rock clubs here in Hamburg, it was all a small family. And great musicians would come to Hamburg. I got to personally meet people like Al Jarreau or someone like Udo Lindenberg, very big star here in Germany, you know, he playing drums in the back. And when you go on stage and just jam, you know, they start to listen. And musicians, you know, after the show would come and say, hey, shall we do a band together? And on the other hand, playing theater, we did musicals in Hamburg. Our musical director took me home with him to record my very first demos. So everything, you know, kind of intertwined.
Yeah, so that led you to your first recording deal in German, I understand. Yeah.
It's always been a crazy story. I used to do a lot of studio work as a backup singer. Mm-hmm. And one of the jobs I did was singing this song, Träume brauchen Zeit. And what I didn't know is that they sent it to the Grand Prix Eurovision, which was an author's thing back in those days. And they said, we want that song. And then they picked me as a singer to do it on television. And I go, okay. I hadn't done television before that. So I said, why not? And it was a huge flop. I think I was the last place. But I had a fantastic record contract. And here I was with a fantastic record contract, which said I'd have to sing German from now on. And I went, no, this is all wrong. This is all wrong. You know, I did you guys a favor. I sang it, but I don't want to go on singing in German. You know, that's not my native language. And so they ripped up the contract. And then I said, oh, okay, you better do some heavy thinking to get your careers, you know, going as a musician. And, since we had just done a show called Chicago at the Hamburg Theater, I thought, and the Neue Deutsche Welle was just starting, you know, to bubble under. I thought, hey, if I would take the American songbook, take the electronic sounds, that might function. I found somebody to you know, record it with me, David Parker. And nobody was interested. So we went from company to company, but no, who wants to hear that, you know? And then just by chance, my publishing company, who was also working with my producer, they made a deal with RCA. Mm-hmm. And the deals back then went like, okay, if you take this and this artist, you also take the other one. Okay, and that's how I got into the boat.
On the back of somebody else, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. So you got your first recording contract, and that's when After Eight comes out, right?
No, the funny thing is, first, I just had a single, Putting on the Ritz.
Oh, right, okay.
And we had a B-side, After Eight. And I tried everything. I made a big deal with a department store where they brought me in like a puppet, placed me in the window, and we had computer music going out. And when enough people were in front of the window, I'd say, okay, put on the tape. They go, there's no blue. And they all thought, you know, I was a moving puppet. And then I do an autograph hour. End of the story is, it was amusing, but nobody cared because there wasn't a company really backing me. And so in the meanwhile, I said, forget it. My dad is in the fashion industry, and we started a sportswear shop So I was working in a sportswear shop.
While putting on the Ritz was moving around in different radio stations, right? No, or not yet.
Nah, not really. Not at all. It was one of these, records they put out in the 80s, and let's see what happens. So since nothing happened, so to make a long story short, I got a call from Sweden, and Sweden said, "Would you like to come over to do some promotion?" And I go, "Okay." And he said, "Yeah, Ritz is doing really well here." And I go, "Oh," this is half a year later.
Okay.
I come to Sweden. There's a Rolls Royce at the airport. And I go, "Okay." And at night, they invited me to this very famous nightclub there. And I look through the curtain and all the guys are in tuxedos, hair slicked, but the girls in beautiful dresses. And I go, uh-oh. Put on my tuxedo, a lot of paint. And then I did my Ritz. And all I had was the single. So I sang Ritz after 8, Ritz after 8, because they wouldn't let me go. And when I went home, I got from Sweden to Hamburg, I got another call that said, "Taco, you're number 1 with the LP." And I go, "I don't have an LP." So when I came back to Hamburg, I was on the phone with David Parker and said, "We have to do an LP." And then we worked like day and night for about 2-3 weeks because the LP already had gold status. Can you imagine that?
Wow.
And then it started going all through Scandinavia. And then Germany got interested and said, "Oh, hey, this is a big thing in Scandinavia. Maybe we should re-release it."
Okay.
And then like a domino stone, one country after the other got interested in it.
Wow, that's such a cool story, actually. I was going to ask you if this was planned or was it a studio push, but it's neither, isn't it? It's neither. It's just sort of ripple effect. People start listening, clubs want to play it, people start, copying the attire, and it just sort of kind of moves through all the charts and everything. And I think it's quite funny. Your version is quite special. It's slower than the original Ritz. It's got a really kind of cadence. The tempo is different. At the same time, it's quite unconventional for the time it was released. How do you think it fit in on the music scene in the 80s? Did you imagine something like that at the time?
Not at all. It was such a big surprise for me too. Working in the studio and the whole combination was so crazy. We had a team. David came from British pop music. I came from rock and roll disco and working with my own band. And Werner Lang, the oldest of us, he had his band and he did popular German music back in the 50s. And then I brought in my keyboarder who was even younger than I was. And so here you have the combination of all generations trying to do this thing. And there weren't that many electronic things. We have a little Casio, a Moog, and that's about it. So we were finding out all these sounds. Oh, what's in the computer? And there were no special effects when we were singing in the rain. We went to the shower and held the microphone under. And when we did the footsteps, I'd walk in the basement.
And they'd be recording it right there, yeah?
Yeah.
Wow. So Ritz goes wild, and then you think you're onto something. But I think Taco's much more than Ritz. I mean, you've got La Vie en Rose, you've got Singing in the Rain, Cheek to Cheek. You even made a tango. You did this Masquinada, which is originally by Sergio Mendes. So I'd like to ask you, what's your relationship? How did you get all this music and throw it into this basket? And what's your relationship to all of this?
Well, it had to go fast, We didn't have much time to do the first LP, and those are all songs I grew up with.
Right.
I knew it from playing at home. So when you sit and you have a briefing, so what else can we do? Okay, 30s. Okay, that was Singing in the Rain, and I had seen this wonderful movie about Broadway, and I had seen. This clip of Clark Gable Putting on the Ritz. That's the only song he ever sang. And I said, that's a cool song, I'd like to do that, And all the others are from all these movies I'd seen. I love these Hollywood movies. So, yeah. And growing up internationally, of course, I knew Piaf, right? I knew La Vie en Rose. And so it was just a matter of what would fit on this first LP. And the Masquinada and all of that came much later. Then we had themes. We did, the Bossa Nova songs on the third LP. And then we did one where we did the swing classics. But when we started, we wanted that whole 30s, 20s vibe, where you play words. And, for instance, After 8, A Rendezvous with Kate, She Works Late.
Yeah.
That's how they wrote back in the 20s and 30s,
So this single became a hit, right? Ritz becomes this tremendous hit. Were you prepared? I mean, what did it mean to you at the time?
Listen, Roberto, I worked ever since I was 17 in the theater. So I was... I really learned it from day one. So if you're always working in the arts, which is a very good basis, and something takes off that slow, but then takes off, you go, okay, you don't really freak out. You're very happy, but all you see is continued work, and you have all these people around you who keep you calm, It says, hey, it's okay. It's only another project, Don't freak out,
Wow. So you're lucky then. You're lucky to have people around you, a network of people to keep you going and also sort of calm the anxiety and the stress of being, a worldwide star and fandom or whatever, fame,
It gets spooky when you start meeting really famous people. Like when I had to go to the States, that's when I got nervous because my premiere was at a private party and the guest of honor was Sammy Davis Jr. And you're going like, oh my God, this is Hollywood. This is mega. And and then I got scared, I was like, I think you really got something started here. Or then touring, being on the Bob Hope show, and then that was really crazy. That was really crazy. And then I kind of understood, okay, yeah, that's showbiz. It's
that's showbiz, yeah. Show must go on, huh? Okay. So do you feel you were ahead of your time? I mean, a whole load of your contemporaries today, like Rod Stewart, Patti Austin, Barry Manilow, just to name a few, they're all recording stuff, the Great American Songbook, my favorite songs from the 60s and the 70s. They're recording the classics. Do you think you were ahead of your time then?
Yeah, I guess so. But it was born out of, this... this frustration. Oh my God, we have to get something on tape. And most artists, they are singer-songwriters, and they get their record deal, and they keep on, doing their own songs. But I started as a cover artist, And I did this singer-songwriting stuff much later, and or whilst working on the LP. And I always liked writing lyrics, so that was always my baby, you know, to write all the words to the songs. Or when songs were offered to me, I would usually change it so they're all little stories. And over the years, I always had little teams who I could write songs with, and that was very rewarding.
Wow.
So it's
so you're a representative of such a special, unique period in music history. I mean, just the 80s. I mean, what are your feelings about living that time?
It was wonderful. It was all much cozier. You know, now I just sit behind my computer. I get a phone call, and my company says, "Taco, you're in the digital charts in Japan." And I go, "Wow!" But you know, you're just sitting at home, and it's so surreal. And in the '80s, it was cozy. You know, everybody kind of knew each other, and when you do TV shows around the world, you meet all these artists. You know, I remember being at the airport and with Robert Palmer. I said, "Hey, Robert, good to see you again." Or I'd be in New York with Annie Lennox, you know, waiting at the RCA, you know, downstairs, and have a chat. Or and then you do all these TV shows, which took ages, you know. Nowadays, this is all post video time. So in the beginning, I was constantly on the road, you know, from one country to the next, another studio. And for instance, the big musical shows in Germany, you would be there a whole week rehearsing. So it was all you know, like a big family. You got to know everybody. You know, you had a lot of drinks together, and and now it's like, you know, you don't nobody meets anymore. It's very surreal nowadays.
It is very surreal. That's one of the big differences, I guess. I mean, I grew up in the 80s. I was 12 in 1983. So yes, but I like the use of your word cozy. I mean, it's a different time. There were closer relationships. The attachments felt more real. You could play in the street today. Which kids play in the street anymore? Yeah. You know, so many different things. And musically, it was, you know, just so many things happening. I mean, there's you experimenting with the Casios and the Moogs and so many of your contemporaries at the same time. And talking of your contemporaries, I mean, so many of them just kind of faded away. Others have gone back into the game. I mean, last year we saw released by ABBA, you know, 30 years later, and Devo put out a new record. I don't know if it was last year too. So have you seen a rise in demand for your music and your presence in different shows?
Oh yeah, it's wonderful. I have my own YouTube channel now, which was installed.
Yeah, I've been checking it out. Yeah,
Aviator, and we have a growing subscribers. We're now over 26,000. And when something comes out, like heavy metal, well, we did a little video, our little team, and we're nearly 200,000 likes and clicks. So, and it's growing and growing, and see, even you called up. So things are starting in South America.
Yeah, I was going to get to heavy metal. Thanks for mentioning it. Tell us a little about that. What's Taco doing now and in the future? What can we expect from Taco?
It's with this new company, we bought or made deals with television stations. They are digitalizing all my songs and digitalizing the shows. So people think, hey, there's all this new stuff coming out, but it's stuff I've done in the past. And I have a lot of songs I wrote with other people also, and it's all in the drawers. It's never been released. So now what we're doing, a song like Far From My Homeland, which is very actual at the moment, We brought that out, all digitalized, but it was a demo. Or when we brought out Live in Japan, that was an old cassette tape, which was completely broken down. I had just found it by chance. And these young guys in our team, they renovated it. And all of a sudden, bam, I got a whole live LP, to put out. So that's basically what I'm doing now.
So it's going to be a mix of new songs like heavy metal and digitalization or repackaging of old stuff that hasn't seen light before, yeah?
Exactly.
Okay. Wow.
And I'm also working now with Tim Helmers as my co-producer. And what we're doing now is the new project we're doing now, which will be out the end of May, will be a real big surprise. It's a big hit from the 30s, which was always done in German. There weren't even English lyrics to it, which surprised me. So,
what song is it? Excuse me?
No, I won't tell you the song.
Oh, okay.
It's going to be a big surprise.
All right. Well, we'll be waiting for that then, Taco. Oh, that's great news, actually. To see people. What about the live shows and the presence on? Are you doing stuff live? I mean, I read that you have like your big band. You have kind of like big band swing, Taco and I can't remember the name. I'm sorry. Taco and the swing orchestra or something like that.
Yeah, I used to work with a lot of bands, but there are just no more possibilities. To entertain a big band, you need a lot of jobs. You got to pay all these people. So what you saw on the YouTube channel, for instance, with Horst Jankowski, he was a really great big band leader. And I'm so glad, that was renovated and digitalized so people can see that. And eventually, if things, start to become normal again, then I would think about putting a band back together again. But
back on the road.
Yeah, but it's not worth it at the moment, and it's a whole machinery that has to get started. You have to, get all the bookings, and it has to be so timed that it's worth going back on the road. Not, oh, okay, I'm going to fly to Chile to do one show. Nobody's going to pay that.
No, really, yeah, it's true. It's such a different world in the music business today.
Yeah, it's the disco shows are over, and I wouldn't do it anymore. I would continually go on disco tours, like in Scandinavia. We do 3 shows a night. No way I am doing that anymore.
A different time, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you do club tours, or you go into a big hotel and you do a couple of nights over there. It's a complete different scene.
Well, at least your music is alive, which is amazing. And here in Chile, your music is alive. I know you talked to Ismael yesterday. There's a couple or 3 of tracks of yours that were on the radio here. There was Ritz obviously and a couple of others. So at least you can think about South America listening to you as well. And that's why we wanted to contact you. I mean, really, thanks a lot for having the honor to. Really, it's an honor, and it's been great fun. The stories are wonderful, and it's just a peek into that wonderful time that was the 80s. I mean, we spoke to Kurt Malou from Double a couple of months back, and he also said, the 80s was so glamorous, and you could walk around Paris and it was really nice, and now you can't do that because it's all bicycles and whatever. And Bonnie Tyler also we spoke to, and she said, yeah, the 80s were amazing. I mean, it's just the glam and the people and the clubs and the drinks and everything. We get these little kind of glimpses into the past, and with your stories we get another glimpse into that wonderful musical time. Really, thank you, Taco. It's been great.
My pleasure. Call up again.
Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Esto fue Entrevistas Pop, hoy junto a Taco. Visita www.radiopop.cl. El poder de los clásicos.
Why don't you go where fashion sits?